Welcome. It is not April Fools. We have a fantastic webinar for you. It's all real. This discussing the modern spine and pain practice, revenue streams beyond E&M and procedures. We have a list of esteemed faculty. And before we kick off, we do want to acknowledge our sponsorship by US Pain Care for putting together this webinar and making it possible. The CEO of US Pain Care, Dr. Paul Lynch, will be our first speaker. From there, we're going to proceed forward through our faculty list, including Dr. Alan Lin, Dr. Eric Cornelius, and Dr. David Russo. But before I turn it over to Dr. Lynch, I do want to acknowledge my co-moderator, Dr. Harjot Bandel, who would also like to invite you to our upcoming additional webinars and the PSPS annual meeting in September.
Yeah, hi guys. We'll have a QR code at the end that you can kind of scan to sign up for the second webinar in this series. We'll have really awesome faculty and a really good agenda for that one. And we'll also have the link for the PSPS meeting in September in beautiful Napa, right down the road from me. So definitely come out for that and enjoy some wine if you do. And then at the end, we also have time for questions. So if you have any questions that come up, just put them in the chat. We'll definitely go through those and keep it very informal, very conversational. The attendee list is not super huge for this, so just get those questions out. And these guys are amazing; they have a lot of experience. So if you have any questions about the business side of things and you're afraid to ask your business partner, or you're attending in fellowship or what have you, ask these guys these questions. They'll kind of tell you the real deal, and they won't sugarcoat it for sure. And then with that, I think we can get started with Dr. Lynch.
Okay, well, Ben, Dr. Gill, I should say, thank you so much for having me. And I want to thank PSPS for this opportunity to sponsor this great event and also to speak. I am lucky enough to talk a little bit today about things that I really like, which is surgery centers and real estate. You can go to, well, I will just say on this first slide, if you want to go back, I'm just going to just say one thing, I guess, as the sponsor here. If you guys have been hearing about US Pain Care and what we're doing and you want to know, what the real story is, my contact info is in the bottom left of this slide. So feel free to reach out. You can text me if you're interested. You can email me. I'm pretty good, easy to get a hold of. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little about surgery centers. I've been pretty obsessed with surgery centers my entire career. In 2010, 11, 12, I built 4 surgery centers in the Phoenix area, and then I combined them under one tax ID, and we were doing about 36,000 procedures a year. We had multiple groups that were together. We had neurosurgeons, we had orthopedic surgeons, we had all sorts of different specialties. And the real key to that becoming the largest surgery center in the country was the fact that we all partner together, which is exactly what I've been teaching my entire career. Is that we're more powerful when we partner together. Surgery centers in general, it's about 80% of all outpatient or all surgeries in the United States are done in a surgery center in an outpatient setting. And so we really want to, and I'm sorry, I said that wrong. 80% of all surgeries are done as an outpatient, and a lot of those are done in ASCs. It's about a $45 billion valuation market right now. There's about 12,000 ASCs. But I want to point out there's about 1 million physicians. And so just there's not enough physicians that actually own their own surgery centers. Next slide. So as you guys probably know, interventional pain is one of the best specialties to own their own surgery centers. We do procedures that are pretty quick. Things like neuromodulation, SI joint fusion, mild, DBNA, all the wonderful things that you guys do on this call are really good cases that can be done in a surgical setting. You don't need to keep the patients overnight in the hospital. You guys are pretty much by definition outpatient surgeons. Next slide. It's from my perspective, there's a lot of really, really good doctors that I was friends with in 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We used to do this teaching together. And I know, some of the top docs in the country, and they would do very well in office-based suites. And, the typical doc that was really trying to do it right, 15 years ago, would do an office-based suite. They might have a physical therapy space. They might have psychology. Some of them would build their own pharmacies or labs, EMG. It was pretty common to do these comprehensive pain care centers. But if you didn't have a surgery center, what's happened over the last 10 years, and especially since COVID, is the costs have gone up, 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 and the reimbursement has gone down, 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 and they've cut service lines. And so some of these doctors, they have these thriving practices helping their communities and feeling like they were making such an impact, are finding it difficult to even keep their doors open. And so I was lucky enough to get interested in surgery centers early in my career. But had I not, I'm not sure that I would have had the success that I've had. I spent a lot of my time with US Pain Care showing doctors how to own their own surgery centers. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, which I want to go through now. Next slide. So the first thing you got to ask, I really think about there's three options with the surgery center. And I know this slide here, it really just shows two. It shows a lease and an ownership. But there's kind of a third that I want you to be thinking about as I'm teaching, which is it's a lease, but you only lease it part-time. And I didn't even know this was possible until about 10 years into my career. And once I learned that, whenever I'm working with an account, I tell them to start with that as their first option, which would be, if you're a relatively busy pain doctor, maybe it's just one or two guys, building your own surgery center might not be necessary. If you happen to be in a state where it's legal to rent the facility for 1 or 2 days a week and get your own tax ID credential with the state, you should always start with that as an option. Now you got to find someone that's willing to do that. Part of my job is to try to encourage pain doctors to work together. So if there's 5 or 10 pain docs in town that have a surgery center, and there's 5 or 10 other pain doctors that want to rent surgery centers, there's a lot of win-win there to go rent a facility. They would get revenue from it. We're going to talk later about REITs, part of not just REITs, but doing lease buy sales. And if you're a pain doctor who owns their own facility and you leased out the facility 1 day a week, we're able to generate an extra 10, 15, maybe $20,000. You can roll that into a lease buyback and sell your building for more money. And so what I try to do is show both sides how to make it win-win. Whoever owns the building can capitalize on the rent and potentially sale, and whoever's leasing the building will get a surgery center with all the hassle. You should check with your own state if this is legal. Just about every state that I've been in allows some form of this. And I shouldn't say that. I would say about 90%. And so check with your state. If you have questions, you can reach out to me. I can put you in contact with people. But with that being said, that's my favorite option, which is a lease for just a couple of days a week. The typical thing you're going to be thinking is, should I build? Should I own the entire thing? Or should I lease? And I think there's kind of pros and cons of each, which I'm not going to go through all that. But a lot of it comes down to how much cash you have. If you have the cash and you want to invest it long-term in real estate, between the rent and the appreciation of the underlying asset, most real estate over a long period of time is going to return you about 10 to 12%. And you should split that up depending on where you live. The rent is going to give you about 4 to 7% per year. And the appreciation of the underlying assets probably going to give you 4 to 6% per year. And you can kind of do the math that typically you're going to get north of 10% return on real estate. And so if you're a pain doctor thinking about a surgery center, it's not a terrible idea to go ahead and just own the whole building. If you're not sure and you kind of want something in the middle, one model that I've been working with people on, I'm working with a large hedge fund out of New York that's, I hate to even say this, but the truth is they're buying $500 million a month of buildings. And they basically told me anytime you have doctors that want to do projects and they're not sure they can afford it, they would come in, partner with the docs, and even let you buy into the building. So you could kind of be a little bit of a blended model there as well, where you could buy part of the building, but not take all the risk yourself. And you don't have to run the project yourself. You'd have a third party that's done this before. Next slide. I realize I'm talking slower than I should, but hopefully this is helpful. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go a little bit faster. When you're going to do a surgery center, my primary advice is to own 100% yourself. That's not because I'm selfish. It's because pain management doctors don't need a lot of equipment, right? You don't need, we have a surgery center we're working on. You could ask Benjamin on here in Reno, and oh my gosh, we're buying trays and microscopes and supplies, and it can be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And the more partners you get, the more stuff you got to buy, and the more stuff you got to buy, the more high risk the project becomes. So when I talk to pain doctors, I tell them just start with 100% ownership. You epidurals and facets of radio frequency and spinal cord stimulation, a few other things, and you should be very profitable. Again, most states will allow you to rent a facility for 1 or 2 days a week or 3 days a week. get your own tax ID. And if you're just a pain guy and you don't need surgical trays and you don't need all this, it could be very, very valuable for you. But if you are looking for partners, I would start with things like ENT, urology, podiatry. I launched something called the Neuromodulation Institute this year. You guys can check it out at neuromodulation.co. And a big part of what I'm trying to do is educate the entire population on neuromodulation. I walk around just as an experiment. And I ask people all the time if they know what neuromodulation is. I've yet to find anyone that knows what I'm talking about if they're not a doctor. And so there's this whole area of medicine that is very helpful, evidence-based, profitable, that people don't know about. So what I've been doing on surgery centers is after I get them up, I go try to approach other specialties that might do neuromodulation, like ENT, hypoglossal nerve stimulation device, or urology, with sacral neuromodulation for urinary incontinence, or even podiatry for things like peripheral nerve stimulation. These are great partners and something you should consider. You can also have musculoskeletal partners, things like neurosurgeons, spine surgeons, and orthopedic surgery. That fits in very well to the pain group. But I would really recommend you start with neuromodulation. I know we got a lot of neuromodulators on this call. Next slide. All right, let's talk a little bit about real estate. I think I'm going to take about 5 more minutes and then I'll be done. So I like to tell people, if you have the opportunity to buy real estate, if you're going to buy a surgery center, that's the very best real estate you could ever buy, because you never really want to be in a position where you put in a bunch of money into real estate to build it out and you don't actually own the whole building. If there's a surgery center that's been completely built out, ready to go, and they'll lease it to you, that's great, but don't ever put in a bunch of cash into someone else's building. And so if you are going to be in the process of a fresh build, you should definitely try to buy. When I talk about a building, there's a couple different ways to value it. I start off by just calling it the brick and mortar price, which is the physical property value. You can just kind of, look around you for 3 or 4 different comps and get an idea of what it's worth. But in real estate, most real estate doesn't trade based on brick and mortar value. Next slide. Most real estate trades in what they call lease buyback pricing. And so what they mean by that is, if you sign a long-term lease, someone will calculate the value of that lease over time, and they will pay you the amount of money up front that will be a good return on their investment. Next slide. The way they track their investment is called cap rates. And this is a multi-trillion-dollar industry in the United States, which is real estate. What typically happens is an investor is going to go to a firm, a broker, and say, hey, I have millions of dollars to spend. Which real estate should I buy, and which markets, and what's a good deal? And so let me just start with a cap rate. What is the cap rate? The cap rate or capitalization rate is basically the return an investor is going to expect from the property. Let me give you an example. If I had $1 million and I went to a broker and I said, hey, I want to buy some real estate, and I said, hey, I really want an 8% cap. What that means is if I give them $1 million, then I'm going to get 8% returns on my investment. I want to make sure you understand, I own the building, right? So I'm going to get 8% every year, and then I might get 5% appreciation in the underlying asset, which means I'm making 13% return. That's pretty good. If I'm and so there's a lot of people out there that are willing to come in and buy the buildings. 7.5% to 8% is pretty typical. If you start really making it a good story, you can get lower, and we'll talk about how you make it a good story. So next slide. So there are certain things, and just again, the cap rate basically is your annual rent divided by your purchase price equals the cap rate. Okay. And so again, if your annual rate was $80,000 a year and you bought the building for $1 million, that would be a cap rate of 8%. 80 grand a year, by the way, you divide by 12, it's about $6,600 a month in rent. You could, someone would give you $1 million for that rent money. Next slide. There are certain things like the lower the cap rate, basically the lower the cap rate is, the higher you're going to get on the building. And the way to get a lower cap rate is to de-risk it. So medical real estate tends to be very attractive for investors. In the old days, before interest rates went up, it was pretty typical for medical to get down to around 6%. But these days, it's actually closer to 7.75 is the last couple of deals that I've seen. But you're a good negotiator. If you're in a good area, parts of California, you could get in that 7 to 7.5 cap range. Next slide. There are certain things that make the cap rate go up, like shorter leases. If it's like a year lease, it'll probably be a 10 cap, which means they want 10% return on their money. If it was a 20-year lease, they might get you down to a 6.5 or a 7 cap. I'm not going to go through all these things because I've only got a couple minutes left and I want to hit a few concepts. But you can reach out to me and I'll send you a copy of this presentation if you want to learn a little bit more about cap rates. Next slide. Just giving an example here. And actually, I'm going to skip by this. I think I've said enough about cap rates. Go to the next slide. So I just want to tell you a little bit about a REIT because I'm pretty excited about it. We are in the process between our medical advisory board and our doctors and our different employee docs. We're approaching 100 different positions across the country. And a REIT just happens to require 100 investors. And so we quickly are going to be in a situation where we can form a REIT. A REIT is almost like a mutual fund for real estate properties, where you basically take properties from across the country. And just to be clear, you don't need 100 properties, you need 100 investors. But if you take, let's just say, and I think I gave you a good example, if you sign a short-term lease, you're going to be paid lower, which is called a higher cap. You might have a 10 cap. If you sign a 15 or 20-year lease, you might get a 6.5 or a 7 cap. But investors really like diversity. And so if we got, let's say, 100 buildings across 25 states, all in surgery centers, all with fancy doctors, all with good cash flow, there's a world where we could get our cap rate down to 5%, especially if interest rates come down over the next 10 years. So there's some regulations. I kind of said it already, but a REIT, or real estate investment trust, is kind of like a mutual fund. You get a bunch of different buildings across, a bunch of different states and a bunch of different investors. You're going to push the risk down, 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 which means the cap goes down, 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 which means the value of the asset goes up. And so that's what we're trying to do right now with the launch of a REIT, which I expect to happen over the next year or so. There are some rules. For example, no more than 50% can be owned by 5 or fewer people. So what that means is you have to have a large group of investors, which statutorily has been set at 100. Next slide. I'm probably not going to have enough time to go through all this. I'm just going to say a few things. We call it golden parachute is the REIT that we're forming, because you can take, all the work you did over years, your real estate, your surgery center, and then you use it as a golden parachute to just kind of float out into your retirement. Next slide. I think I'm going to finish. If you want to just click through to the end, I don't want to over talk everyone. There's, if you reach out to me for the slide, we have up REITs, we have pre-REITs, we have all sorts of things that we can teach you. I have the McDonald's movie in here, which is kind of funny, talking about the real estate being worth more than your business. Next slide. And I think there's my contact info again. If you want to take a picture of the screen or reach out to me, God bless you guys. Thank you for having the opportunity. I will say that I'm going to head out early because I'm getting on a plane with my family to go to San Francisco, but I appreciate having the opportunity to be here.
All right, thank you, Dr. Lynch. I think we'll move on ahead to Dr. Russo.
Okay, well, thank you. I guess I drew the short straw tonight in the lineup because Dr. Lynch did an outstanding job of explaining all the different ways to build revenue and investment opportunities in your practice, and now I get to tell you all the possible ways that you can either go broke or go to jail if you don't do it right. So, but we'll step through this together and hopefully inform you with some valuable information to keep you out of trouble. So next slide. A little bit about our group. So we're out here in the Pacific Northwest in the Portland, Oregon market. Oregon is a unique place for many reasons, but one reason is that it's a very rural state. So we have six clinics that are separated by over 200 miles. We see a wide variety of patients from those locations. We participate in a multi-specialty ASC project. We own our own neurotoxicology lab. We're 12 providers and integrated behavioral health. So we spend a lot of time thinking and managing compliance. So next slide. Okay. Why is it important to understand these concepts and get them right from the jump? Because the stakes are high. So healthcare is one of the most regulated segments of the economy. There's a lot of ways to do good and a lot of ways to be profitable. But if you don't color inside the lines the way you're supposed to, the regulators can be merciless. in doling out their punishment. So for things like a Stark violation, you could be looking at fines as high as 27,000 per claim or per infraction. You could be looking at mandatory jail time for violating something like a kickback statute, and you could be permanently excluded from participation in federal health programs, which for a specialty like our own would really be a very limiting business event. So pain practices are highly scrutinized because of the kinds of high volume and well reimbursed services that we offer patients. Our field has always been under the microscope of regulators. So next slide. So the first big kind of regulatory concept I want to spend some time kind of talking about is the Stark Law. Um, Stark Law deals with physician self-referrals, and it's really based around the notion of limiting what might be called self-dealing behavior among actors. So if you think back to the good old days in the 70s and 80s, when most doctors were small business owners and most doctors were very happy to participate in Medicare because the reimbursement was so good. There were lots of opportunities to create these kind of vertically integrated referral networks that didn't provide a lot of value but drove up the cost of care. And so Senator Pete Stark developed this regulatory framework to ensure that physicians were not engaging in this self-dealing, self-referral behavior, but also identified key exclusions for ways that those kinds of relationships and activities could happen. And so those exceptions were things like in-office ancillary services, making sure that arrangements had bona fide employment agreements, personal services, fair market valuation, and group practice. The group practice structure was, a very prized way of avoiding some of the hazards of these self-dealing, self-kickback kind of relationships. As healthcare is evolving into a more value-based, kind of integrated framework, we're seeing that some of these regulatory processes are also having to evolve. So Stark deals with physicians who are providing what are called designated health services, physical therapy, clinical laboratory, DME, and it provides guardrails for doing that in certain circumstances, like when it's in your own office, under your own tax ID, at fair market value. It's a regulatory scheme that focuses on physicians. So next slide. In contrast, the anti-kickback statute is it kind of casts a net over everyone in the healthcare ecosystem. So Stark's focused on physicians. The anti-kickback statute is focused on everyone who's trying to make a dollar off a physician. So that could be vendors, MSO operators, private equity, hedge fund managers, hospitals, clinical laboratories. So this statute sort of tries to regulate all of those activities and ensure that when there are relationships between those entities, that they are done in what are called certain safe harbor ways. So there are investment interests are structured in standard ways that conform with good accounting practices. The space and rental is all done at a fair market value. There are clearly written terms. Personal management services agreements have all been scrutinized to make sure that they are not linked solely to referral volume. So these are ways that these arrangements can be structured to be compliant with anti-kickback regulations. The thing to understand that's really important about Stark and kickback is, if you go back one slide, Lincoln. So Stark is a strict liability. So there is no, so the defense of I didn't know does not defend you in a Stark violation. You are supposed to know. period. So I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to send that patient to my close family member who happens to own the DME store in town. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to do that. Too bad, you did it, and now you're going to get punished. So not knowing is not a defense. Next slide. Anti-kickback, they do have to show intent. There has to be, they have to prove that there was an intent or a network or an agreement to commit some kind of illegal fee splitting arrangement. So that's the big difference between those two regulatory concepts. Next slide. So this sort of summarized the point I was trying to make. Stark, there's no intent required, strict liability. Uh, Stark is focused on physicians. Both can be very expensive and potentially damaging to your career if you're not compliant with the regulations. Next slide. So let's talk about in-office ancillary services. So this is one way that you can self-refer and be compliant because everything is being done in your own tax ID or in your own group practice. So that would be considered a compliant relationship, provided that you can show there's ongoing supervision. It's not just, kind of like a passive relationship, that the services are being provided in the same building or the same campus. So it's part of the same group, and that the billing is done under the same tax ID. So those are basically the three ways that you can use the in-office ancillary services exception to create revenue from in-office ancillary services and be compliant with these regulatory schemes. Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about industry relationships. So we all interact with industry, and we do it for good reasons. They provide us knowledge and education, and we often consult with them on the development of new technology. And that is all good and well, provided that it's all sort of written down and above board. So consulting arrangements should be written down at fair market value. If you're asked to give a talk or a presentation, there should be, legitimate speaking arrangements and honoraria and things like that. So, it's really just trying to avoid the scenario of pay to play. So physicians get in trouble with industry relationships when, again, the relationship is structured around volume. It's structured around steering patients to a particular uh, therapy, and it's structured around pay to play. So you want to avoid those scenarios. Next slide. Some of you may remember this article that came out, I think probably about 9 or 10 years ago, but it really focused on this pay-to-play scheme involving a company called Insys that was basically had an opioid product that they were marketing for, I believe it was cancer pain. But they signed up a bunch of doctors to give talks. The talks were shams. There were no talks. There was no marketing. It was just a way for the company to take doctors out for dinner and run up a big bar tab and say that it was a speaking event. And of course, when the regulators caught on to this, a lot of people got in a lot of trouble. So again, you should be able to show that the speaking event was well marketed, that they actually took attendance, that there was fair market compensation, all of those kind of common sense things. Next slide. Okay, so common pitfalls and things that I've certainly seen over the years. It seems like these things kind of bubble up in waves and phases. Urine drug testing arrangements. So UDS companies come in and they offer you either goods or services in exchange for sending specimens to their lab. Again, that's not going to pass the test. Physical therapy services provided in a doctor's office where there's really no supervision of the therapist at all. It's again just kind of sort of the abuse of a lot of passive modalities, just in order to charge to charge a patient a PT code. And more recently, what's really come under scrutiny is some of these device and distributor arrangements, which again can be legitimate if they're structured correctly, but can also look to regulators as a way of steering patients towards using certain devices or certain kinds of equipment. So all of these arrangements should be closely evaluated and scrutinized by yourself and by an attorney with some healthcare experience. Next slide. So how do you build a compliance program in your practice? Well, it begins with designating someone the glorious job of being the compliance officer. That sounds like a really terrible job to have, but it's actually a lot of fun. You get to review contracts, you get to think about the relationships, and it shows like if there is a claim made and you say, well, our compliance officer reviewed it, you're already, well above where most physicians are when these issues come up. Like, you have a compliance officer, great, okay, you have a compliance officer. Annual legal review. If you have a corporate attorney at your board meeting or board retreat, you should go through your key relationships and just make sure that they are still properly constructed. Any kind of lease arrangement or real estate transaction or buy-in should have some kind of fair market analysis or opinion attached to it. If you do work for industry, again, make sure that there's a legitimate contract, make sure attendance is being taken, make sure you can show that it wasn't just a pay-to-play event. And in the unfortunate circumstance that you do find yourself in a situation where you may have run afoul of the Stark Law or the kickback, it is better to fall on your sword and self-disclose. That sounds very scary, but you will end up paying something, but you will end up paying a lot less for admitting your mistake, and asking for forgiveness than being hauled into a very long and protracted legal proceeding. Next slide. So that's my summary. I won't read it to you again. You'll have my slides. I'm happy to be available as a resource. I also recommend that if you are engaging in any of these types of arrangements, that you do review their structure with a healthcare attorney. Should really be a healthcare attorney, not just a general attorney, but a healthcare attorney who has knowledge of Stark and kickback, because as I said, the healthcare environment's very regulated, and there's a lot of ways to get in trouble without realizing it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Russo. Looks like we have a question for you, but we can maybe just save it for the end. We'll move on to Dr. Cornelius.
All right, Dr. Russo, that was phenomenal. Thank you. After he scared the crap out of us, I'm going to talk about something that's not as intimidating, and that's staffing. How do we leverage the heck out of each other's strengths but minimize our weaknesses? And we do that by building partnerships and teams. So the next slide, please. My name is Eric Cornelius. I'm blessed to serve as the Chief Medical Officer of the Pain Institute of Southern Arizona. I'm biased, but I think it's a phenomenal practice. It's near and dear to my heart. Just a little bit about my background. I have a surgical background with an internship at U of A. Did an anesthesia residency and pain fellowship at the Mayo Clinic, but I want to highlight the other point is that I pursued my Master's of Business Administration, and I cannot stress enough of how important that was for me, not just learning how to read financial statements, because I could teach myself how to do that, but really about how to change my mindset from scientific-based medicine like philosophy to business sense, how to take calculated risks, and how to really leverage the resources around you. And I think that pain management specifically is evolving in a specialty, not in just delivering more advanced procedures, but also how to run a successful business, how to run a successful practice. Dr. Lynch, Dr. Russo did a great job at already talking about a lot of the things that, I didn't know going into practice. And so kudos to all of you that are participating in this webinar, but really try to embrace the business and the healthcare economics because it's not just rewarding, but it's a lot of fun. Next slide, please. So I always, in any, no matter what presentation that I give, I always talk about our vision statement. And this kind of leads into staffing and sort of what you want to do for your staff and your crew. And that's our vision statement. There's always supposed to be a North Star in your organization so that everybody, doesn't matter if you're the janitor, chief medical officer, the owner, or an MA, what drives your practice and what your decisions are based off of. And this is our vision statement is through compassion and innovation, we will make a meaningful difference in the lives of individuals and in communities. And so here at our organization, that's the most important thing that we go by. And any decision that we make, whether it's a business decision or whether it's a clinical decision, it's based off of this vision statement. Next slide, please. A little bit about the practice. People think that I developed the practice. It was actually in existence about 8 years before I showed up in 2012, but it was a sort of a small mom and pop shop. We had a total of 15 employees. That's including 3 physicians. My 2 older partners, they have since retired, but we turned that one clinic into a much larger practice that I'll review in a short while. But essentially, and I kind of wanted to highlight a few things that I feel like has led to our growth and our success is, first and foremost, we were very intentional of recruiting particular APPs, particular clinicians, particular physicians, and also administrators have an active role in really building your practice. And again, making sure that you hire the right people to make sure that your dream comes to fruition. You cannot be a part of the community if you're not really a part of the community. So your goal in developing a practice in whatever community you serve has to be more than just providing good clinical care. It has to be, the involvement in the community, involvement with leadership to make sure that you are a pillar of the community, and also leveraging strategic partnerships, whether it's other medical practices, any panelist here, is a good resource, for you to partner with, whether it's research, whether it's joint ventures on things, whether it's mentoring, really leverage, the relationships that you're going to build along the way, even with industry as well, too, is that, and maintain the compliance, maintain obviously, everything above water, but at the same time, there are a lot of things that we could learn and build with our industry partners as well. And then one thing that we've really incorporated were different ancillaries and ambulatory surgery centers as well, too. Next slide, please. And so this is our practice now. We have 20 providers total, 5 full-time clinics with a few satellite clinics, total of 3 ASCs. And we went from 15 employees to 175 employees. And as you can see there, we're a fairly busy practice. And I don't mention this slide to boast or pound my chest, but it really is, to kind of put into context of what are the strategies that you can implement in your own practice to be able to optimize the impact that you're making without burnout, which is the title of this portion of the presentation, which is staffing models that actually work. So in the next few slides, I'll review that with you. So go ahead and go to the next slide, please, Dr. Thank you. So there's 2 big points, and I could talk about this for an hour, but I won't. This is going to be just the 2 big points that I feel like were the best things that we incorporated into our model that has allowed us to scale from one clinic with 12, 15 employees to several clinics with 175 employees. And we'll start off with inspiring staff with structured teams. So next slide, please. So essentially, and I'm not going to read this verbatim, but just a background, a history about how we felt that we were in our practice before scaling was that the provider, particularly the physician, was the center of the universe. the center of the clinical experience, that everything that evolved around him or her. And so the issue with that is that it almost undermined everybody else in that model. In other words, APPs, MAs, front desk, receptionist, you name it. And so we transitioned from making sure that that physician is only one small part of the entire clinical experience. And that, and as you see an objective, what we really did is that we really created leaders out of everybody in our organization. I saw a study one time, and there was a data point that really surprised me, is that they looked at patient surveys and sort of how they rate their providers. And we're rated just as much on how the patient is greeted at the front door than making the right diagnosis, which I found that to be astonishing, because I could have the best training possible, the best clinical acumen whatsoever, and if the patient is not greeted, with a smiling face and a welcoming face from my front desk personnel, then it could really derail the entire clinical experience. So what we've done is we've done a few things where we have created specific teams with our MAs, ABPs, and physicians, so it's all consistent. Typically, our ratio in our model is one physician, one or two APPs, depending on how big the physician's practice has grown. One or two MAs per provider in that model. And then obviously one check in, one check out, person. And there's a whole other sort of back office admin when it comes to schedulers, billers, coders, etc. But the clinical team that a patient walks into greets the same person, at the front door. Works with that particular MA who is already familiar with not just the patients, but the providers that they are working with. The follow-up process as well too. Patients become more familiar with this whole team approach, to the model itself. One thing that I really felt that especially when it comes to your medical assistants who are typically, they are not as respected as we are as providers, is that we've empowered them to really become true partners, clinical partners, to be able to really build, their leadership skills, their communication skills. We've done everything from, providing, the nice scrubs, that do have their names embroidered on them, business cards with their names on it. You'll be surprised of how much pride goes into their work and how that shows off with good clinical care, but just by doing those small things and really treating them like good clinicians. And so, or clinical partners, I should say, not clinicians, but clinical partners. And what does that do for your practice? Well, it's going to form a consistency. If your patient talks to the same medical assistant, when it comes to, pre-procedure instructions or post-procedure questions or issues, then there's going to be a familiarity there and a trust factor. So delivering consistency is obviously going to provide the best results possible. We have a really good retention rate where it's pretty rare that we lose even a medical assistant, despite them getting a bigger paycheck down the street, because medical assistants, they want to be valued for what they provide, and they want to create value as well too. Our reviews have been obviously much improved with having this model, and overall, it just delivers better healthcare. Next slide. The next thing I'll talk about is this model of destination therapy, and this pertains specifically to our nurse practitioners and our physician assistants. And Dr. Lynch had to come on, jump off the call, but when he and I started practice, he would agree with this, that historically ABPs, their role was to keep the patient in the practice by just refilling medications month after month after month, and occasionally come up with what I put there as knee-jerk injections, whether it gets one, two, or three epidurals, medial branch block, RFA, rinse and repeat again and again and again until the physician came up with a better plan for that patient. Unfortunately, historically, that's exactly how pain management was, 15 years ago, but we've evolved. And so what we did with our practice is a couple of things with our APPs. We've created teams, like I mentioned on the previous slide, where one APP or two APPs will work with a specific provider, because at that point, they'll be able to collectively come up with game plans together, whether there's a new intervention that they're going to introduce into the practice, or whether it's, a certain practice philosophy that physician has. But essentially, we created these teams so that, there's an element of consistency and good teamwork and camaraderie. The second thing that we did is we extended their visits from 15-minute visits to 20-minute visits. And then we've really focused on what we call destination therapies. And essentially, we reviewed that every single patient that walks in with a specific diagnosis, there's typically a destination therapy that's going to be available for that patient beyond just injection therapy or beyond just a cortisone shot or RFA. What I mean by that is whether it's peripheral nerve stimulation, BVN ablation, mild SI fusion. If you look at all the patients that you really treat, there is going to be a more advanced procedure that's going to serve that patient long term, as opposed to just keep doing injections again and again. And so what that's led for our practice is a lot of wins. It's really empowered and inspired our APPs to become from meta refillers to true clinicians, where they're coming up with the right diagnosis for that particular patient and coming up with the right destination therapy, what I call this advanced procedure, and to be able to provide a meaningful impact for the patient long term. So it empowers both patients and providers. From a financial perspective, it's really improved our bottom line, because you're providing these therapies that not only provide greater results, but also, especially in an ambulatory surgery center setting, the financial perks to that as well. Um, Again, consistency, improvement of culture, and also having that reputation that this is the premier group to go. The last point is doing something special. My mentor always told me, if you're going to be a specialist, do something special. And by providing epidural after epidural after epidural, that ain't so special anymore. Now it's time for us to mature as a practice, to be able to mature as a specialty, to provide patients, better outcomes, with these long-term therapies. And in that process, we do that by really empowering and inspiring our staff, again, whether it's MA, front desk, or even APPs. And with that, we'll go over to Dr. Lin. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Of course, I've been listening to the speakers before me, really eye-opening. I wish, I could get their ideas, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That would be a much less bumpy road I've been through. And my topic, of course, now surgeon pain and the specialists, now how do we make alignment for a strong team? And I think, I would say the easiest part in a medical career, probably just being a good doctor, right? So we got very good education. We graduated from medical school, fellowship training, and we were placed right next to the best doctors of the world. And now we try to become one of them. And but the skills, knowledge, these are easy to get. But what's behind it, actually, like Dr. Cornelius was saying, the MBA training and or education is a must, I would say, probably for any doctor. I got my MBA from UC Davis. I think it changed my mind, and from one doctor individual, and I can be, very skillful and knowledgeable. But on the other hand, and I don't know how to develop my career. I don't know where to go. But after that, I think, at least I see a much clearer picture, especially in the United States, such the business-driven world and money talk is everywhere, and I can be at least part of it. All right, can we get the next slide? And yeah, so the MBA, of course, there's a disclosure, but I would like to kind of use this page to talk a little bit about what's happening in my career. The first company is also Jam Pain Management Sports Medicine, and I was the owner. And start from scratch. One table, a few exam rooms. That's the beginning. I did not have a procedure room. I was back in the surgical center to open the door for me. But this actually turned out to be 20 employees in one locations. It's big, and I've been wondering whether it's strong or strong enough. Because truly, I have been treating actually Medicare, Medi-Cal patients, and these patients, you have to go by volume, and it exhausts me, and the value is keep trending down. And right now, actually, now I saw a picture this morning, and in LA, it's $9 a gallon in the gas station. So everything goes up, but the reimbursement actually or denial actually is more common from the insurance companies. And so that's why it's a challenge. But I think, we pivot and try to build a better mix and try to kind of still survive in this different market. So Sequoia Spine and Sports Medicine is kind of another company as we set it up, not as not a C corp but a S corp. Try to kind of use a different financial model to kind of get better. I think we are having a good time since actually this is a small and beautiful model. And the premier spine orthopedic group and accommodate me, so I have a strong connection with them. And back to my previous background, I've been a spine surgeon for more than 14, 15 years, and first trained in Denmark and in scoliosis correction. And when before I came to the United States, I practiced orthopedic in UK, mostly in London and Edinburgh. And also, my first stop was in New York Knicks. But on the other hand, I spent most of my time in the HSS Hospital for Special Surgery under Dr. Scott Rodio. And so all this actual surgical background make me actually speak at the same language as the surgeons. I think this is actually the main mission of the PSPS was formed simply because the connection between surgeon and also other specialties need to be stronger to help the patient. And I have a startup, and part of the founder that care for we use AI model. I think the AI actually is going to affect everybody. And Elon Musk was saying, hey, there's not going to be a doctor anymore in 5 years. And I think it's true, but probably we just need to practice medicine in different way. Doesn't mean actually you are fired, you're laid off, or you have no job, and you only spend the rest of your life in your backyard. But we have to consider in what way in the new era. Actually, like Mercedes have the first car hit the road, and we're still riding a horse, or we are about to buy a new Mercedes. And the size of performance, I use this offshore and mostly take care of the international professional athletes come to the United States and get some local care, let's say in Tokyo, Paris, and others. So it actually help us, to get a very good tax and also very good revenue from there. But back to my work in United States, I work for EFC Performance Institution, and then the title is mostly for golf and tennis. And Olympic Games, I've been helping Team GB Great Britain since London Olympics, and the FIFA. I'm going to help at the England national soccer team, and I just finished a meeting in Seattle, and then we are about to start ATP, PGA, and many other professional sports. So I think all this work experience and put me in a position try to build a communication between typical surgical service to non-surgical options. Pain management specialists, interventional specialists, anesthesists, and physical therapists, or even other therapists, actually, all kind of, under the same ecosystem. All right, can we go next? And when you actually, look back, and there's one published paper saying less than 7% of the patient actually, get spine surgery, even have a long-term low back pain, fail this, fail that, and I think this is actually pretty low. But on the other hand, in United States, we have already been doing 4 to 5 times spine fusion than any other part of the world. So this actually make us actually we have to kind of consider whether this model has any room to make more progress or truly this for the best interest of the patient. All right, next please. But when you think about hey success, many people think about hey this money or I want to be a millionaire, billionaire at one time. I would like to have a private jet. I don't want to sit in any economy seat anymore when I fly to anywhere. But before you consider that and think about your value, especially in the ecosystem. If you have your impact, your influence, your way to say or generate value attribute to the others, I think that would be the money actually now automatically come to your account. And I would say Albert Einstein is not a very rich guy, but he's of course has his own understanding. This is one of the best quote I can get. Next, please. Another quote, of course, and from Bruce Lee, and simply because I work for many UFC fighters, and the PI and the midterm, and Bruce Lee, arguably the father of the MMA. But something you believe is right, don't think it's going to turn into a great success instantly or in a few minutes, a few days, a few weeks, or even a few years, because we are so far still in a very old business. And then the doctors actually a few thousand years ago already started their work. And then I would say so far I don't see anything absolutely new or we practice different and or business development we still follow the same rule to get it. All right, next please. A few strategies, other than kind of read it from the screen, I want to share actually some struggle or some challenge I've been through in the last few years. I think talking to surgeon could be easy. Usually, we open the door, say, introduce ourselves. It's all welcome, and then they see the happy face from the manager, referral coordinators, and then MA or even the patient in the waiting area. But on the other hand, surgeons actually, also when they start in service, come to my office and introduce themselves, and we have very good knowledge, but never enough because a lot of things are now happening in the surgical world. So the minimum invasive options were not very popular, but now pretty much everywhere. The non-fusion surgery was not a popular choice. Now even Tiger Woods actually get the most recent lumbar surgery as artificial disc replacement. So I think these are very good progress if we are not aware of each other's progress, and such as at spinal cord stimulator, we are using it for many things beyond actually a typical radiculopathy now. And there's all these things now coming together, and we have to exchange the knowledge. And for me, I have the phone number. I visit their office, and in a regular basis, I talk to the manager, talk to pretty much everybody. And for one time, for a few months, it's all of a sudden actually uh big drop of the referral coming from a big group. I say, fine, some seasonal thing. And I talked to my manager, what's going on? And we see actually much less patient. It usually send us 5, 10 patients a day from single one group. And now I don't even have double digit after 4 weeks. And my manager did a little bit investigation, was saying, "Hey, there's a new service. Actually ahead of us. We're at the end of the highway. The patient would like to go to closer location." It makes sense, but of course, trust nobody, right? And I called the insurance company, and I called the referral coordinator from the group, and also I even called actually the colleague who just get their service or office open, and then kind of, hey, thank you for joining this area, blah blah blah. But my finding is one simple, very stupid finding is actually the referral team in the insurance company remove and update the list, and by not adding my name back. So I think so that's why all of a sudden, wow, and we lost actually could be a few hundred patients in 3 months. I think that is actually a big lesson. So I put data driven because as a owner, as a doctor being practiced, you have to pay attention to the environment. You have to talk to so many parties. You have to know, just like driving a car, you know your speed, you know actually, even any cop actually waiting on which highway exit, for you. And so far, luckily, after driving, to pretty much everywhere, I got zero, ticket by by speeding, and it's not like Tiger Woods. No, he got too much troubles. But back to actually today's topic, I think having a strong connection and pretty much common regular communication with the surgeon will be the key. And don't do it only once. Don't do it actually too sparsely or only one thing happen. And some surgeons actually call me and say, "Hey, you only see actually my failure patients. Actually, most of the patients still." um, benefit a lot from the surgeons, from surgeries. Why actually no, I get such a small number referral from you? I think of course, you have those actually phone call, interesting phone calls is pretty much purely based on misunderstanding. So that's why and make as many friends as possible. Join their academic meeting, invite them to the PSPS or have a office open day and to get all the parties, even physical therapists, and then the primary medical doctors, some key people, and walk around and then have a little bit fun, but at the same time also present them, what you have been doing. So you are building a brand, and that may last for at least a few decades. All right, next, please. But what should we do go from here? I think let's start right now and talk to your management team because that is actually your best support, and because they are seeing something, feeling something, or hearing something, and you don't see. And we have been seeing actually patients in the office doing procedures in the surgical center and very busily. We barely have enough hours, but use your teammates very closely. And nowadays, surgeons and other, service is not like a funnel or a pyramid or a ladder, and we need to form a very strong ecosystem to help each other. And I think it's not one party is superior than the other, or one is a listener, another one is a lecturer, and we put the patient in the middle, just like we developed a model and in the ERC PI, and we do have the key case in the middle. We bring in the HSS Hospital for Special Surgery as a surgical support. We have athletic trainer, we have a personal trainer, and we have a physical therapist, and we have a nutritionist, and also we have a sports psychiatrist, and then whenever necessary, we bring in some other options, stem cell, peptide, and also other treatment, and all come together. So of course, that is a little bit costly, may not easy to get all the resource on board, but you have to work on it. You have to provide it to your patient and also to your key partners. Next, please. Okay, so I think AI, of course, will change everything, but no, it won't change actually the way we communicate and in person. Simply because the understanding or the trust need time to build. And but I will encourage everybody, even like introvert like me, and come out and have a handshake, smile, and send message and send email, phone call. I open the door, I dress up, I tie it around my neck and sit there, no appointment. I can see you actually even between your patient care, and I sit there 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and there's a doctor in the waiting area for you. You probably spare 30 seconds, 5 minutes, and we still can have a good talk. I think nothing can replace that. Next, please. Okay, so I think the Q&A, of course, for the other providers, and feel free to ask any questions. You have my cell phone, my email. I think whenever anything you're confused, or I can kind of bring in, and Dr. David Lee and me are also running the leadership immersion track in PSPS, and truly there's a kind of support for the fellows and also new attendings. And but the support is needed pretty much your whole career. Feel free to ask.
Well, I was super impressed with this faculty, Dr. Bandel. Any concluding comments you would say about it?
Oh, yeah, that was great. I had even I learned a lot every time I listen to these guys talk about all these things. There's a lot of information packed here, but I think we'll have a recording of this so you guys can always refer back to it. And then if you have any, I know we're kind of running out of time, but if you have any questions for these guys, all their contact information will on here. You can just kind of reach out to them on a case by case basis. And I think we have the QR
Fantastic.
codes for the next webinar, and then also for the meeting in Napa. So you guys should all come to the annual meeting for sure. It's a lot of fun.
So yeah, our next webinar is going to be June 2nd. We'll go to the next slide here. We had the privilege this past week of being in Seattle for the PSPS Mid-Year Conference. It was great seeing many of you there. It was a fantastic time as far as the Cadaver Lab and APP course. I expect the annual conference is going to be even better. Of course, at the beginning, I misspoke and said September. I meant October 15th to 17th in Napa Valley. Dr. Weisbein hinted that she might be giving out some wine out there in Napa as well, but we'll see if she holds to that. I encourage you all to also submit some abstracts for that meeting, and there's also an opportunity to submit research grant proposals. And Lakin, next slide. We also have the Education Committee is putting together some fantastic additional components to this meeting. You can expect some surgeon case review, skills lab, another APP course, product showcase, a lot that's going to go into it. Harjot, thanks again for helping put this together with our team. We'd like to express our gratitude to Dr. Lynch, Dr. Russo, Dr. Cornelius, Dr. Lynn. Great night.